On the morning Eva died, the river kept moving as though nothing had changed. The tide rose and fell, slapping against the wooden stilt of the fishermen's huts, as if to remind men that water does not pause for anybody. But inside Chief Tamuno Perewari's chest, it felt as though the tide had left and forgotten to return. He stood in that small mud-walled room, a flickering lantern casting shadows on the wall. On the raffia bed, his newborn daughter cried with a piercing, fragile voice that sounded like a whistle being blown far away. Her 3 brothers, Priye, Tonye, and Tari, stood close by, sniffing in confusion. They did not yet understand what had happened. Only hours earlier their mother had sung to them, teased them, laughed with them. Now she lay still, her lips pale, her breath gone. Tamuno gripped a wooden bedpost to steady himself. He wanted to cry, but his tears refused to come. Instead, he clenched his jaw and whispered to himself, "I will be father and mother. I will not grumble. I will not fail. Poverty will not sit in my house like a landlord crossing his legs. Not while I still breathe." Eva's last words returned to him like echoes across the water. She had held their baby girl's fist with trembling fingers and whispered, "She came on Monday, so her name is Ayue." Her eyes had softened as she looked at him. "Tamuno, don't change it to Buloma or Aba like you are planning in that stubborn Biose head of yours. Leave it as Ayue. When you call her name, let me still hear my culture in your mouth." He had laughed then, loudly, trying to push death away with his voice. "I promise," he had said, so firmly that even heaven must have borne witness. And so the name stayed. Later, when people asked why a Niger Delta fisherman's daughter carried a name that sounded Ghanaian, Tamuno would always reply, "Because her mother gave it to her. And a wise man does not rename his last gift." Now, left with 4 children and the memory of a smile that would never return, Tamuno Perewari began to live for promises. Every dawn, before the first cock crowed, he would rise from his raffia mat, rub his tired eyes, and murmur, "Another day, another battle. Eva, you left me with 4 children and a river full of bills. But I will not break." He always reached for her photograph on the wooden shelf before stepping out. The photo was worn from the number of times he held it. Eva's wide smile stared back at him as if mocking his loneliness. "Don't worry," he would whisper. "I will keep my promise. I will make them great, even if this river swallows me first." Sometimes little Ayue would rise quietly and catch him talking to the photograph. "Papa, you are talking to Mama again," she'd say, her voice carrying the innocence of someone too young to understand sorrow. Tamuno would smile and pat her head. "Yes, my daughter. Sometimes I must remind her that I am still carrying the world on my shoulders." By sunrise, the house always stirred with life. Priye, the eldest, would tie his school belt tightly, pretending to be a little man. Tonye, the second boy, loved to read aloud by the window, raising his voice as if he were the governor giving a speech. Tari, the last son and once the baby of the house, chased cockroaches with a stick. "Leave that cockroach alone," Tamuno barked one morning. "When you should be chasing your future, you are chasing insects." The boys laughed, but Ayue, quiet, watchful Ayue, sat at the corner arranging her small exercise books. Though the youngest, she always faded into the background. One morning Tamuno gathered them around the wooden table, the legs of which wobbled each time someone leaned on it. "My children," he began, his voice strong, "this house may be small, but my dreams for you are big. I promised your mother I would send all of you to school, no matter what it takes." Ayue's face lit up. "Papa, does that mean I will start secondary school this time?" The room grew silent. Tamuno's eyes fell to the floor. He scratched his forehead, sighed, and finally spoke. "Ayue, I tried. But the money is not enough. I have paid Priye and Tonye's fees. Yours will wait." Her lips trembled. She hugged her books to her chest as though holding her future tightly. "But Papa, I am always first in class. My teacher says I should not stop learning now. Priye, the eldest, adjusted his belt and said bluntly, Papa, maybe she can manage at home for 1 year. I am in senior secondary now. You know my fees are expensive. Tamuno turned sharply. Keep quiet, Priye. Do you think your sister's dreams are less important because she is a girl? The room stilled. Ayue wiped her tears and forced a small smile. It's okay, Papa. I understand. One day, when I make plenty money, I will build my own school and teach myself. Those words cut him deeper than any insult. He reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. Forgive me, my daughter. I am doing my best. The next day, he took her by the hand to Mama Tilda's tailoring shop, a small wooden room filled with fabrics that spilled over like waves. The hum of a sewing machine greeted them. Mama Tilda, Tamuno greeted, placing a hand on Ayue's shoulder. I brought my daughter. School will wait this year, but her brain must not sleep. Please, teach her tailoring. I will pay whatever I can. The older woman raised her brows. Small girl, can your fingers hold a needle without poking your eyes? Yes, Ma, Ayue answered quickly, nodding with determination. I will learn fast. I want to be the best tailor in Bielsa. Mama Tilda chuckled and nodded. If your spirit is strong, I will make you my star apprentice. For the first time in days, Ayue's face lit up. If school was close to her, then tailoring would become her classroom. That evening, Tamuno returned to the riverbank where his canoe waited. The sun was sinking, painting the water with streaks of gold. He stood there a long while, staring at the wide, restless river. You hear me, River Nun, he muttered. Give me fish tonight. My boys need books. My girl needs a chance. He pushed the canoe into the water and rowed into the fading light, his muscles aching but his spirit burning. This was how he lived, one promise, one oar-stroke, one sacrifice at a time. Years rode by like the river, sometimes calm, sometimes rough. Tamuno's back bent under the weight of labor, but he smiled each time one of his children wore a school uniform. For him, it was proof that promises could become flesh. Priye, the eldest, was his pride. From the start, he had the sharp tongue of a lawyer and the boldness of a chief. Even as a teenager, when others whispered, Priye would speak up. His teachers praised him for his brilliance, and his father carried those words like medals on his chest. Priye, the eldest, was his pride. From the start, he had the sharp tongue of a lawyer and the boldness of a chief. Even as a teenager, when others whispered, Priye would speak up. His teachers praised him for his brilliance, and his father carried those words like medals on his chest. Tamuno laughed, clapping him on the back. When that day comes, I will dance from Bielsa to Abuja barefoot. The world will know that Chief Tamuno Perewari kept his promise to his wife. Ayue watched her brother shine with a mixture of pride and sadness. Each time he carried his bag to school, she remembered the exercise books she left unopened on her mat. But instead of complaining, she sat by Mama Tilda's sewing machine, learning to stitch dreams into fabric. The day Priye graduated from university, the whole village gathered like it was a festival. Tamuno could barely contain himself. He borrowed money just to hire a bus that would carry him and his relatives to the campus. When Priye stepped forward in his black gown and mortarboard, receiving his certificate in law, Tamuno's chest swelled like a drum. He clapped until his palms ached, shouting, "That is my son. The first lawyer in Perewari family." Old men patted him on the back. Women ululated. Children ran after Priye chanting, "Lawyer! Lawyer!" That night, back in the village, Tamuno killed his last goat and poured palm wine for everyone. He stood before the crowd and declared, "My brothers, my sisters, my wife died and left me 4 children. I promised her I would make them great. Today, you see my first fruit. The rest will follow. And when my bones are laid in the ground, my children will stand tall like Iroko trees." His words echoed in the hearts of everyone. That night, Tamuno slept with joy so heavy it felt like wine. But joy, like the tide, does not stay long. When Priye returned from the city months later, he was not the same boy who once wore his father's torn slippers to class. He came back in pressed shirts, speaking with an accent, carrying himself as though the ground owed him respect. "Papa," he said one evening, barely sitting before speaking. "I cannot remain in this village. I must go where things are happening, Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt. If I stay here, I will rot." Tamuno's eyes filled with pain. "And your father? The man who carried you on his back when your mother died? The man who gave you everything so you could be a lawyer?" Priye sighed, pulling out his phone and tapping it as if the conversation bored him. "Papa, I will send money. Don't worry. But I cannot waste my life here." From that day, Priye disappeared into the cities, sending little or nothing, answering his father's calls only when it pleased him. Tamuno sat many nights at the riverbank, whispering, "Eva, did you see what your son has become? He has forgotten his father. He has forgotten your grave." If Priye was prideful, Tonye was cunning. He never raised his voice like his elder brother, but he carried silence like a weapon. As a boy, he was always scheming, selling sweets at school, collecting coins, finding shortcuts. By the time he was a young man, he could smile at you while digging a pit at your feet. One day he came to his father with a broad smile. "Papa, I have good news. Our grandfather's old house in Yenegoa, I can sell it for good money. With that money, I will start business and make us rich." Tamuno frowned. "Sell my father's house? That house holds our ancestors' bones. It is the only route left for us in the city." "Papa," Tonye argued smoothly, "what is the use of a house when hunger knocks on our door? Let me sell it. I swear, you will not regret it." Against his better judgment, weary and desperate, Tamuno agreed. Weeks later, Tonye returned with a new motorbike, flashy clothes, and stories of business deals. But when his father asked, "Where is the money for the family? Where is the food for your siblings?" Tonye only laughed. "Papa, patience. Big men don't reveal their plans too early." Soon, the truth spilled. Tonye had squandered the money, spending it on pleasure, friends, and fleeting luxuries. The community mocked the Perewari family. "See them," people whispered. "The chief's son has sold his heritage for pepper soup and palm wine." Tamuno hung his head in shame, his heart heavy. "Eva," he muttered in the darkness, "your sons are scattering what I gathered with my sweat." One evening, after a long day of fishing, Tamuno returned to hear his neighbors laughing in the compound. He asked what the matter was, and an old woman replied, "Chief, your sons are now the story of the market. One has run away to the city and forgotten you. The other has sold your family's house and is busy chasing women. Is this the legacy you promised your wife?" Those words pierced deeper than any spear. Tamuno staggered into his hut, fell on his knees before Eva's photograph, and wept. "My love," he whispered, "I tried. I truly tried. But our sons, they are dancing with strangers while their father starves. What more can I do?" In that moment of despair, only one child's footsteps entered quietly, carrying food in her hands. "Eyue. Papa," she said softly, placing the steaming bowl before him. "Eat. Tomorrow will be better. You still have me." He looked into her eyes, so steady, so filled with quiet strength, and for the first time realized, the seed of hope was not in his sons, but in his daughter. If Priye was the pride that turned to ashes, and Tonye the cunning that brought shame, then Tari was the laughter of the house, the last hope wrapped in mischief. From childhood, Tari danced before he walked. He was the one who could mimic elders' voices until everyone laughed. Even when hunger pinched, his joke softened the pain. Tamuno would sit under the mango tree, watching Tari perform with neighbors' children, and he would smile. At least this one, he often thought, will bring joy to my old age. He may not be a lawyer, but maybe he will become a teacher, a pastor, or something that carries respect. But as Tari grew older, his love for performance found a new stage, the glowing screens of social media. With a cheap smartphone borrowed from a friend, he recorded skits, dances, and jokes. Soon, his videos went viral in Port Harcourt and Yenagoa. Young people hailed him, Princess Tari. Princess Tari. Yes, he did not only make jokes. He dressed as a woman, painting his lips red, tying wrappers, swinging his waist until even women laughed. The name, Princess Tari, stuck like palm oil on cloth. While his followers multiplied, so did his distance from home. "Papa," he said one evening, strutting into the compound with his wig still on his head, "you don't understand the world now. This is how money comes: followers, fame, brand deals. Soon I will buy you a car." Tamuno's face hardened. "Remove that wig. A Perewari son is not a clown. Is this how you honor your mother's memory? By dressing as a woman to entertain strangers?" Tari rolled his eyes, pulling off the wig lazily. "Papa, you are stuck in the past. People like me are the future." The argument ended with silence, but a crack had opened between father and son. Weeks turned to months. Priye rarely called. Tonye was lost in debts. Tari was swallowed by fame, spending nights in hotels, clubs, and studios. One morning, after hearing that Tari had gone viral again for mocking elders in his skits, Tamuno could not bear it. He slumped on the riverbank where he once found strength. Villagers rushed him home. "Papa!" Ayue screamed, kneeling by his side, tears rolling. The old man's eyes fluttered. "Eva. I tried, but our sons," his voice cracked. "They have broken me." From that day, he could no longer stand tall. His frame bent, his steps slowed. He spoke little, except to Ayue. While her brothers chased shadows, Ayue's hands turned fabric into gold. Under Mama Matilda's tutelage, she became the best seamstress in the market. People came from far villages just to wear her gowns. Her fame spread, not through noisy videos, but through excellence. With her earnings, she bought medicine for her father, repaired the leaking roof, and kept food on the table. "Papa," she would say gently as she set his food before him, "don't look at the sons who left. Look at the daughter who stayed." Tamuno's eyes often brimmed with tears. "My daughter, you are the true Iroko in this family. May your mother's spirit crown you." It was through her tailoring that she met Mensa, a quiet Ghanaian engineer working in Bielsa. He brought his torn trousers to her shop one day, and by the time she returned them, neatly mended, he was already stitched to her heart. Unlike her brother's empty promises, Mensa was steady, respectful, and God-fearing. He visited her father, knelt, and said, "Sir, I do not come to take your daughter away. I come to add strength to your family." Their marriage was simple but filled with joy. The whole community witnessed how Ayue, the girl denied schooling, had risen to dignity while her brothers wandered in disgrace. Meanwhile, Tari's fame peaked. He traveled to Lagos, dancing on big stages, wearing wigs brighter than the sun. Money flowed, but like water in a basket, it vanished quickly, spent on parties, drinks, and hangers-on who vanished when his star dimmed. One scandal followed another, accusations of mocking tradition, rumors of death, videos of him drunk in clubs. Slowly, his name turned from laughter to insult. Back in the village, children no longer shouted, "Princess Tari," with joy. They whispered it with mockery. At that point, Ayue had
Tamuno,
become the pillar,
lying weak on
wife,
his mat,
mother,
heard the whispers
and
and
provider,
covered his face.
while her brothers drifted in
Eva,
shame.
even the last hope
But
has
fate
scattered.
was not done with the Perewari family. The once strong fisherman had become a shadow. His voice was a whisper, his steps unsteady. Many nights, He lay on his mat, staring at the roof, listening to the crickets sing where his wife's laughter used to echo. One night, with Ayue beside him, he spoke slowly, as if every word weighed like stone. "My daughter, when your mother was dying, she placed your hand in mine and said, 'Do not let my children scatter.' I tried, but my sons," his eyes clouded with tears. "It is you who has carried the promise. When I close my eyes, remind them who they are." Ayue held his hand tightly. "Papa, rest. I will not let your name die." A few dawns later, the village woke to the mournful sound of the gong. Chief Tamuno Perewari had gone to join his wife by the river of ancestors. The burial shook the town. Canoes lined the riverbank, women wailed, and men praised his strength. But what the villagers whispered most was not his death, it was the absence of his sons. Priye arrived 2 days late, in a borrowed suit that still smelled of another man's perfume. His eyes were sunken, his pockets empty. The great lawyer had lost his job after corruption charges and now walked with the air of a defeated soldier. Tonye too returned, his motorbike long gone, his debts chasing him like angry bees. He stood at the graveside with his hands trembling, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Tari was the last to crawl back. No wigs, no laughter, no cameras. Just a broken man whose fame had dissolved into scandal. The villagers scoffed. "See them, 3 sons, all scattered like dry fish. If not for Ayue, this family would be dust." For the first time, the brothers lowered their heads, ashamed before their sister. Ayue did not mock them. She did not remind them of their betrayals. Instead, after the burial feast, she gathered them in the hut where their father once held meetings. Her voice was steady, carrying both the softness of their mother and the firmness of their father. "My brothers, the world has seen your downfall, but the world has not seen the end of the Perewari name. Papa's grave is still fresh. Will you let his spirit rest in shame? Or will you rise, even if it is late, and rebuild what is broken?" The men, humbled, listened. Priye wiped his face. "Sister, forgive me. I thought education was enough without humility. I lost everything. Teach me where to start again." Tonye bowed his head. "I was greedy. I sold our roots. But if you will trust me, I will serve instead of lead." Tari broke down in tears. "I was blind with fame. Now I have nothing. Sister, let me stay by you. Let me learn." Ayue placed her hands on theirs. "Then let us begin, not as scattered sons, but as a family. Papa and Mama are watching." Years passed, but unlike before, healing replaced sorrow. Priye took a humble job under a local NGO, using his law degree not for wealth but to help fishermen and widows with land disputes. Slowly, respect returned to his name. Tonye worked with Mensa, Ayue's husband, learning discipline. For once, his cunning turned to creativity. He opened a small but honest trade business. Tari, guided by Ayue, turned his comedy into clean stage performances for schools and churches, warning young people not to follow his reckless path. Laughter returned to him, not mocking, but healing. And Ayue, she became the matriarch. Her tailoring business grew into a fashion school for young girls. People came from across the Niger Delta to learn from her. In every gathering, the villagers would say, "It was not the sons who saved the Perewari name. It was the daughter who carried her mother's promise." On the anniversary of Tamuno's death, the 4 children gathered by his grave. Priye laid down a law book. Tonye placed a loaf of bread from his trade. Tari dropped a microphone. Ayue, with quiet tears, placed a piece of cloth she had embroidered with the words, "Papa, we are one again." The wind rustled the palm trees, and it seemed as though the river itself whispered back, "Eva, your children have found their way home."